Hello, it's me, Brody McLeod, again, on YouTube and maybe Instagram this time. I'm quite fucked, sort of logistically, morally, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, for a lot of different reasons. And there's a lot of people who've fucked me, fucked us, my family and I, and some of them are fucked as well, sort of emotionally and logistically and kind of interpersonally. Not fucked, there's a lot of different contexts of being fucked, can't be fucked, totally fucked, give a fuck. There's a lot of people who just don't give a fuck anymore, and they feel like they've been fucked by me because I stuck up for myself eventually, but I did it in a really irresponsible and myopic and inconsiderate way. And there's a big part of me which exists in a kind of state of cognitive dissonance, where it's sort of like trying to stick up for myself in a situation where a lot of the people who tried to fuck me over who were fucking my family and I, sort of figuratively and literally, were people who I thought were like my best friends, it's like when the pennies finally started to drop, I kind of realised that all my life I'd been surrounded by people who were only there because it was out of necessity. The whole thing was being sort of puppeteered and orchestrated by this group of people who didn't have our best interests at heart, which is, parasite's a really offensive word, but that is kind of how it is. They just wanted our money and they wanted to have sex with us, and that's all they cared about, really. And to think that that's, some people have done really bad things to us, to my family and me. Some people have done things which, in comparison, aren't as bad. Sometimes it's kind of like, there is a term, moral parallax, which I'd like to explore today because it sort of defines my situation. On the one hand, I'm in dereliction of duties as a human being by not trying to take to task and hold to account people who've done awful stuff, and they're still doing it, and it's revolting. And I'm the key witness, the chief informant. I was going to write a shit autobiography, and I was thinking about working titles. One of them was Spirit of Ecstasy. If you're going to buy a used roller, Spirit of Ecstasy is the angel on the front of the roller, the little figurine, the little statuette, and it's like the most important bit of the car. Without that bit there, you probably wouldn't buy it, but it is the most useless bit of the car as well. It does nothing to drive the car forwards. It has no engineering or mechanical purpose. It probably sort of stops the aerodynamic nature of the car. It'd probably go a bit faster without one of those. And it sort of nods to historical events as well, that Spirit of Ecstasy title. I'm probably not going to get around to writing my autobiography. Somebody else will probably write it. You can buy the rights off me if you want. Loads of it wouldn't be able to be published because it's classified, and some of it would be too inappropriate for Waterstones. Maybe they're right on the dark web, who knows. Anyway, here's what I'm reading today. What does the term moral parallax mean? Please could you give me a detailed explanation with some hypothetical examples. The term moral parallax refers to the idea that our moral judgments and perspectives can shift significantly depending on our vantage point, context, or the framework through which we view a situation. Just as in optics, where the apparent position of an object changes when viewed from different angles, Moral parallax suggests that our perception of what is right or wrong can similarly alter based on our position as an observer or an actor. It's not about simple change of focus, but often implies a deeper shift in ontological status of the moral issue itself, meaning that what we perceive as fundamental nature of moral problems can change. The concept is particularly relevant in contemporary discussions about virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and how these technologies might alter our moral intuitions and responsibilities. Here's a breakdown of the key elements. Shifting perspective. The core idea is that moral understanding is not static but changes as our viewpoint changes. This can be due to distance, physical or psychological distance from an event. Context, the specific circumstances surrounding an action. Framework, the moral principles or values we apply, e.g. utilitarianism versus deontology. Identity, our role as an individual, a member of a group, or an observer. Irreconcilable positions, sometimes in some philosophical interpretations like that of Slajov-Zizek, moral parallax can highlight a parallax gap where two perspectives are fundamentally irreconcilable and no easy synthesis or mediation is possible. Instead, we constantly shift between these differing views, revealing a tension or paradox. Influence on morality. The concept suggests the way that we perceive for some phenomena like violence, dignity, or responsibility is influenced by these shifting perspectives, thereby affecting our overall moral vision. Virtual versus physical reality. And a prominent application of moral parallax is in the realm of virtual reality. The question arises, do actions in a virtual world have the same moral weight or status as actions in the physical world, especially when the virtual experience can feel profoundly real? Hypothetical examples of moral parallax. Here are some examples illustrating how moral parallax might play out. Example 1, virtual violence versus real violence. Viewpoint, a player in a video game, player in a hyper-realistic video game, Grand Theft Auto, engages in virtual violence, stealing cars, shooting non-player characters, NPCs, and committing other acts of aggression. From this perspective, it's just a game. The moral weight of these actions is often dismissed because the victims are not real sentient beings. The consequences are confined to the digital realm. The primary concern might be game strategy, skill, or entertainment. Viewpoint B, observer with a focus on dignity. An observer, perhaps a philosopher or a parent, views the same virtual violence through a lens of human dignity and the potential impact on the player's empathy or desensitization. From this perspective, even if the violence is not real in the physical sense, the act of performing it, the mindset it cultivates, or the normalization of such act could be seen as morally problematic, potentially eroding respect for dignity in the long run. The moral status of the action changes from harmless play to something with potential ethical ramifications. The parallax. The moral parallax here is that the stark difference in how the same actions, simulated violence, are perceived and judged based on whether one emphasises the virtual nature of the event versus its potential psychological or social impact on the agent and wider ethical considerations. Example 2, corporate decisions and environmental impact. Viewpoint A shareholder or executive focused on profit. A company executive facing pressure from shareholders makes a decision to cut corners on environmental regulations in a developing current country to maximise profits. From this perspective, the moral imperative might be framed around fiduciary duty, economic growth, and providing jobs with environmental damage being a regrettable but necessary externality. Viewpoint B, local community member affected by pollution. A person living in the community downstream from the factory experiences direct health consequences and a loss of livelihood due to the pollution. From this perspective, the moral imperative is centred on justice, health and survival. The company's actions are seen as morally reprehensible and a direct violation of their rights. The parallax. The moral parallax lies in the wildly divergent assessment of the good and harm caused by the same corporate actions based on different positions and priorities of those involved. What is a sound business decision from one angle is an ethical catastrophe from another. Example 3, anonymous online behaviour. Viewpoint A, anonymous internet user. An individual behind the anonymity of a screen engages in cyberbullying, spreading hateful comments or misinformation online. From this perspective, the lack of immediate physical confrontation and the perceived distance from the victims might lead to a diminished sense of moral responsibility. The actions might be seen as harmless trolling, a form of expression, or simply not a big deal. Viewpoint B, from the victim of cyberbullying. The recipient of these online attacks experiences significant emotional distress, anxiety, or even physical harm as a result. From their perspective, the actions are a direct violation of their well-being and a serious moral transgression, regardless of the physical distance or the digital medium. The parallax. The moral parallax highlights how anonymity and digital distance can create a distortive moral perception where actions that would be clearly seen as harmful in a face-to-face interaction are dismissed or undervalued when viewed through the screen. In essence, moral parallax invites us to critically examine how our position and context shape our moral outlook, and to recognise that what appears morally acceptable from one angle might be deeply problematic from another. It encourages a broader, a more nuanced understanding of ethical challenges, especially as new technologies and social dynamics introduce novel forms of interaction and consequence. I don't really want to fuck people, even if it's to try and unfuck myself, because it feels morally wrong. Some people don't have autonomy, they don't they're in situations where they didn't really have any say in fucking us. Some people did though, do you know what I mean? And you might be a paediatric surgeon who saves lives every day, but if you go and then shoot up a school at that point, there isn't a kind of an equitable, moral equity we have where you've done this many good things, but then a kind of a bad thing, which you don't kind of get a differential equation where the fact that you've done with the best of intentions lots of good ever countenances or justifies doing something which is absolutely morally reprehensible, which they have done to us. They've done things which are just revolting, and they've done it so that they can go to the gym. Maybe I will. Yes, that's moral parallax. On the one hand, people are cunts, but on the other hand, they're not cunts. They're just slaves, And the problem is, for me, it's there's loads of them and only a few of us. There's loads of people who've been involved in fucking us over the last 30 years. So many different ways. They've done some really cruel things. And they don't want to take ownership or accountability for that, they just want to remain clandestine and secret. And it seems, I don't really need to point out, to people that what they did was wrong. I think, there is an element of guilt and understanding and sort of atonement and acceptance from what I can glean, but I'm not going to get an explanation of all the harm I've caused, and I'm not owed one either. But it's different ways. It's like you close one eye or the other eye, you look at it, and the object changes when you look from one eye to the next eye. That's parallax. They use it in astrophysics as well for stuff. But yeah, if you could be fucked to watch this for 40 minutes and you're not fucked, you don't want to be fucked, and you might not give a fuck about me, might feel a bit like, what the fuck is he talking about? But yeah, fuck it.